Well, welcome everybody to our divorce coach clinic about how to get your life back on track after a breakup. And I'm super excited today because I've got three of my coaches with me who have been training with me for some time. So I'm really excited to introduce them to you. And today, please do pop your questions in the chat. Do interact with us. As many questions as you want, get them answered. If you want to, I know we've got some of our coaches in watching as well. So if you've got any questions for the coaches, do pop them in, guys. And let's get this webinar off to a great start. Okay, so I'm going to introduce my coaches today. We have the lovely Lucy Podmore. Hi, Lucy. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, Sarah. Yes, thank you so much for including me on this webinar. And it's lovely to see everyone and everyone who's watching the recording. I'm one of Sarah's coaches, and I came on board after my own divorce. I was in a long marriage, and it wasn't actually my choice, but it became my reality. And then I was suddenly thrown into this complete wilderness of emotional overwhelm and into a legal world that I knew nothing about. I didn't know anyone who'd been through a divorce, and it was difficult to know quite where to turn. And that's where I came across Sarah, and with her training, she's put a smile back on my face. And that's what we're all here to do today, is to help you get that smile back and to show you that we can do it and you can do it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know you've been you're on your own journey through the training, and you're doing the master practitioner training as well, aren't you? So working very closely on my elite coaching team. So it's very exciting to have you here, Lucy. Thank you for joining us. We also have Rebecca Bell. Rebecca.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for letting me take part in this. So I've been a family lawyer for over 21 years. I specialised in collaborative law, which is a way of trying to settle disputes round the table as amicably as possible. I think I was drawn to that because I liked helping people and trying to enable them to reach a settlement as quickly and amicably as possible. And therefore that naturally led on to finding out a bit more about Sarah's coach. I read about it in, I think, Red magazine, and came on board about a year ago. And I just find the techniques so positive. I use them in my own life, and they work. So I'm really looking forward to helping you to help get your lives back on track as well, using some of these fabulous techniques.
Oh, that's great. And I think this is the thing, what we teach and the way we work with clients, they're life skills, aren't they? They're not just for breakup and divorce. Any challenging situation, any time where you need to dial down those negative emotions and take your power back. You know, life throws us curveballs all the time, doesn't it? It could be on the school run, could be at work, could be just sitting at home and something happens, you know. So again, these are really good life skills to master. So thank you, Rebecca. It's really exciting to have you on. I know you've got some great background with your legal experience as well. So you've obviously seen a lot of clients over the years. So yeah, be interesting to see about that later too. And we have Sarah Hodson. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, nice to meet you all, and thank you, Sarah, for welcoming me today. I have been divorced for about 4 years. I went through quite an acrimonious divorce. I am a single mum with 2 young children, and I found the whole process extremely overwhelming, stressful, traumatic, everything that we all go through. And I had an email that appeared from Sarah in my inbox, and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. Spoke to Sarah, and she was so positive. And I thought, you know, I'm going to give this a go. And I'm learning so much. The skills and the strategies and the techniques have been absolutely brilliant. I think it's constantly work in progress, but I feel in a completely different place a year on than I did a year ago when I spoke to Sarah. So thanks to Sarah, and I hope that, you know, I can share some of the experiences and help you all today. So thank you.
Being here. So I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it, that everybody goes on their own journey when you go through a divorce. And, you know, having been through a very tough one myself, you know, it can be really hard, especially in the early days, to take your control back. So for those of you who are watching us and listening to us, do pop in the chat. Where are you in the breakup process? You know, are you at the beginning, the middle, the end? Are you struggling with anything in particular? Pop that in the chat, and then we can answer those questions for you. So do use this, and you can write just to the hosts and panelists privately if you want, or you can just pop it on the general chat. But do use the chat box to ask any questions, because we're here to help you today and get you the answers that you need to move forward, and move forward like these guys have as well. So Lucy, I'm going to come to you first, because I think one of the hardest things is taking control of what's going on in your head when you're going through a really tough breakup. If someone's, like you said, it wasn't your decision, but it became your reality. So how did you shift your mindset to be able to get back on track?
Yeah, that's a great question there, Sarah. It's when you are in that state and you're in complete overwhelm and shock, you're trying to come to terms with it. And indeed, you probably have to catch up, because the partner, when it's not your decision, has reached a different point. So you're playing catch up and you need time to process. So you just have to really step back and give yourself time to come to terms with what's going on. And also, it's important to take the responsibility, because this is about you now, and this is not about your ex, and this is about how you wish to go forwards. And I think it's, you know, it's quite normal, as I say, to go through the roller coaster. And then you also have to live in the moment. That's what really helps. And I do mindfulness as well. So that helps, that you looking back can be very negative and looking forwards can be a bit overwhelming. So if you live in the moment and just take it day by day, and it's giving you that time to process what's going on with that. And I think that's incredibly important going forwards. And also, you may be feeling that, I know particularly for me, it happened midlife. So for me, I was sort of thinking of the years that we were going to miss. And when I do coach people at midlife, they're often thinking and grieving over something that was probably going to happen in the future. But actually, you know, there was a reason the relationship finished. And so if you're finding yourself grieving over the future, then it's bringing it back into reality and just putting the focus back on you, and that gets you back into the moment. And that's really what helps you to start thinking and start to get the clarity back to make the decisions.
Yeah, really wise words. And I think one of the challenges, again, is, and you must do this, Lucy, is when people come out, and I think you did in your own breakup, I certainly did, where, you know, my ex had moved on. So when I found out about things, he was already, you know, in another relationship by the time I caught up with the reality of what was happening. So obviously I was like months, if not longer, behind him in the recovery process, just having to come to terms with what was going on. So, you know, do you see that, Lucy? And is that what happened to you?
Yes, exactly. I think it is. You've just got to really, you've got to find that time to get back. You know, he's much further ahead than I was. And as you say, I just had to find the catch up and to give myself the time for that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really, really challenging when your partner has moved on, because often it feels like there's total rejection, but actually understanding the fact that they're just at a different stage to you. You know, and sometimes you can move forward and everything. Do you think, oh, I'm having a good day? And you might even go a week and you're thinking, actually, this is all going really, really well. But then sometimes life throws you a curveball, doesn't it? And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I'm way back. In fact, I'm worse than I was like at the beginning. How is this possible? Rebecca, is this something that you see when you're working with clients?
I certainly do. Yes, that really resonates actually with that question. And I think the thing to focus on is that that's actually not the case. It may feel that that's the case, but it's helpful to use some of the techniques at this point. And perhaps you may have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her loss cycle, which is really helpful to see the roller coaster of emotions that you may be going through with your loss. The initial denial, and then going into a heightened state of anger, bargaining, a very low state of depression, and finally emerging in acceptance. And sometimes, like you say, you feel like you are making progress, and that's good. And then something may happen. You may meet someone in the street who you haven't seen for a while, and you start telling the whole story again. And that just triggers you, because the brain can't determine between what's happening right now and what's happened before. So the brain goes into that overload, overwhelm feeling again. but you have made progress, and it's useful then to perhaps think about how far you've come, and maybe have a gratitude list of things that you're happy about. I had a client this week actually, and she was very low, and we're at the beginning of her process, the first meeting, but she said, I just feel so low. And we talked about anything positive, and she just couldn't think of anything. And in the end, she said, well, I did clean the floors this week. And because we all know how anything like that, you think, oh, it's done now, I've done that. And then as the conversation naturally carried on, we didn't focus on it, but she started saying other positive things. And then for her action plan at the end of it, she was going to plan one nice event with a friend. And we thought about what it could be and how she would do it. And she decided it was going to the theatre. But she messaged me yesterday and said, I booked. And it's just something small, but you could just see that shift of focus really as the session continued.
And I think that's really important. And I'm really pleased you brought up the grief cycle there, the loss cycle of sort of going through those different phases, because it can feel like a real emotional roller coaster, can't it, as you go through those different stages. But you don't always move through those in a straight line as you sort of said them, do you? Sometimes you can get up to acceptance and then find yourself back at anger. And is that normal, Rebecca? Is that what you see?
It's exactly what I see. I mean, I saw it when I was a family solicitor as well. And I think being a collaborative lawyer was quite helpful because I could see it from, you know, sitting around the table, see it from both sides. Like Lucy said, that point about one person being much further on than the other, we really do see that. And I think that's absolutely true. So I do see that people will flip back into anger, into a depression, but all the while you are moving forward. And I think that's where the gratitude list that we encourage people to do is really helpful. So you've got that to hand. And that, yes, I have moved on. I mean, after my sessions, when I do an email to the client, I always say, look what you've achieved and make a list of it. And it does tend to shift their focus.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because quite often we're living in the moment. We're not really looking at, well, how far have I come? So actually just to remind yourself about, you know, I am moving forward and I am doing things now that are different to before. I think that makes a massive difference. Thanks, Rebecca. I think sometimes, as you said there, it's the small things that make a massive difference. You know, you think, gosh, small things can't really change how you feel. But actually, sometimes it's the teeniest of things, isn't it, Sarah, that can have the biggest impact?
Absolutely. So I'm a firm believer in tiny habits, rituals, particularly rituals. And I think that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that in the mornings, if you set yourself up set yourself up with very positive habits, positive rituals, it'll help you get through the day. And I almost would encourage that as you get up in the morning, before you even get out of bed, that you do your nice deep breathing. You may take on techniques like tapping, reassuring yourself with really very positive phrases that are so simple that I feel safe, I feel loved, today I'm going to get through this day, before you even put your feet out of your bed. And then you sit up and you get on, you know, you get going to your shower or whatever your next phase is, but you've set yourself up with something really positive. And another thing that I always encourage is the night before the children are going off to see their father, or that, you know, they're going to see the father, I'll always encourage small rituals with the children, so that it's a nice video night, popcorn night, and they actually, you know, enjoy the process of planning. And every time we repeat and go through that ritual to make us all feel safe and secure and positive and happy. And I think those things are really important.
Absolutely. I think with kids, it is about providing that stability and maintaining the consistency, because you can only control what goes on in your own house, right? You can't control what's going on in the other parent's house. So, you know, again, maintaining those rituals and things, I think is really, really important. You know, and also other things in the morning, I think, that to get you like positively awake. I mean, I know that one of my clients had this real beeping alarm that woke her up, and as soon as that went off, the sound was quite jarring, but then she felt terrible. So actually, you could shift that around, couldn't you, Sarah, and do different things with your alarm ringtone and.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to be as kind as possible to yourself, and really one of the things is to become self-aware that you are filling up your tank with a lot of love for yourself. So I think sometimes you feel that, you know, you give your love out to everybody else, but you don't love yourself. And what you're essentially doing is becoming aware of that, of really comforting yourself and wrapping yourself up with these lovely rituals, which is why I use the word ritual rather than habit, because it sounds quite velvety, it sounds quite luxurious. And it's a really lovely way of step by step building up. But the tinier the ritual, the more powerful it is. So you strip it right back to be really, really tiny.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good advice. And quite often people are surprised. Sometimes it's the tiny things that you do that have the biggest impact. So I think that's quite surprising. I mean, even just moving your, you know, sofa around in your lounge, or swapping the knives and forks over, those things can have a huge, huge impact. It sounds strange, but try it and then let us know how you're getting on, because I think the small things can have a massive impact. So thank you, Sarah, for that. So, Lucy, I know that you specialise predominantly sort of in midlife, although I know you've got lots of clients at different ages. But for people going through divorce, I guess there's, especially in midlife, there's lots of other things you've got to take into consideration as well, aren't there? So, you know, give us a heads up on what we should be looking for and maybe thinking about at that time.
Yes, well, midlife is a change for everyone. And I think when you're going through a divorce at that time, you're also probably going through changes with the children. Probably the children are moving on and it's going to have an empty nest. And also with the family house. I mean, you're at a stage where probably you need to really rethink about whether you're going to maintain the family house and the expense, and also thinking of something, as we say, in the small things as well, but thinking of what would be quite exciting for you to move forwards with that, and to really think about probably looking for little houses or for something that would be exciting, that's something you've always dreamt about. And if you've got something exciting to look forward to, then it'll make it much easier in that regard.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, I think getting your sparkle back is key, but I think at midlife there's so many things going on, and you might be going through the menopause or the andropause. If you're male watching, you might be, you know, dealing with like work issues, and obviously, as you said, empty nesters. I mean, empty nesting can be quite stressful for happily married couples, can't it?
Yes, exactly. It's a change. I mean, the change can happen at any time. I mean, life is full of twists and turns and changes. So nothing's ever perfect in that regard. And so this is a time when you just embrace it. And the great thing is, I mean, when you go through a difficult time, there's always a silver lining, as you say. But I do think that actually when you come out of divorce and separation, and especially at this time, it's actually a golden opportunity. And it's a golden opportunity for you to just do exactly what you want and to start living on your terms. So you can start to design what you want, as in regard of where you want to live, and also just, you know, your whole retirement, because those golden years can still be golden, but they're just for you. And it's very exciting in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I think, you know, gone are the days where, you know, when you get divorced, then it's like, well, I'm going to be on my own forever. There's so many dating apps now for the over 50s, you know, that just specialize in that market, because no more is it sort of slippers and pipe or blue rinse. It's let's get out there. In fact, actually, the silver splitters, as they're known, are the ones where the marriage rate is actually increasing, the only category where the marriage rate is going up. So obviously they're having a lot more fun than we ever thought. So if you are going through that, then I think there's a lot to be said for just embracing it, as Lucy said. But Rebecca, when you come out of a divorce, and it can be all consuming, and you previously as a family lawyer will have seen this, it's sort of, you know, it's all consuming. You're focusing on the paperwork, the legals, the money, the financials is super stressful. You know, and you put all your energy into just surviving that process a lot of the time, so that when you do actually get the final, you know, decree, absolute, saying, right, you're done, you're free, however you want to flip it, and you're thinking, right, as Lucy's saying, I've got the rest of my life, yeah, how do I do this? A lot of people feel stuck, don't they? And it's a big transition. So what are your top tips for that?
Yes, I think carrying on from what Lucy said, that's absolutely right, that people do have that decree absolute in their hand, they have the court order. And having handed these documents over so many times over the years, I find that people often don't have much of a strong reaction to it. It is almost a sense of, well, what now? I've had the solicitor involved for the last few months, the financial advisor, all these people around me, and now they're gone. And I think that's a good time to continue with the coaching as well, because we've got excellent tips to help you beyond that. We don't just disappear at that point and can help you. And as Lucy said, you have got that golden future ahead of you, but how do you actually plan that? What are you going to do? That's what can seem totally overwhelming, isn't it, at that point? What now? So just again, we're talking about keeping it simple, aren't we? So keep it simple again. Get a big sheet of paper. Think about things that maybe you've never done before. In the marriage, you maybe had your habits that you used to have all the time, go to the pub Friday night, do this. It was all very much as a couple, but now you've got that opportunity to think, well, what have I not done? What would I want to do? Just brainstorm, put some ideas down. That may seem overwhelming, so just choose 3 of them, and then choose one and think, what's the first thing I'm going to do to be able to do this? So if you wanted to go to a Zumba class, don't just turn up, research it, see where they are, maybe have a chat with the teacher. Is it a good fit for you? Break it down. It's all about breaking things down so you don't have that overwhelm. And that way you can lead on to your more positive future. And once you've done the Zumba class, who knows what might happen after that. So
I think it's true. I think it's true. These things lead on to other things, don't they? I mean, breaking it down to small steps, I think, is key, because I think sometimes when you come out of a breakup, you're looking at what's ahead and it's like this massive mountain in front of you. You think, I've got to get up there in one big step, and you don't. In fact, it's really difficult to do that. So it's small steps, and you might do a bit of research. You might then make a call. You might speak to a friend, and then maybe you go with a friend. You know, it's about setting up so that you enjoy it, but also that you keep moving at the same time. I think that's really important. But like you said, once you've done it once, then it opens the door up, and you might meet people that might want to do one of those solo traveler holidays. You know, I mean, I remember thinking at the time of my divorce, that sounds like the most painful, horrific, awkward, embarrassing, humiliating thing to do. But having done it just once, it was eye-opening. It was so much fun. And again, it comes back to that self-care that Sarah was talking about before, you know, focusing on you, doing things for you. But you also meet so many people who are in similar situations. And so you're never really alone again, because you kind of then make them as friends. And next time you want to do something, they might come with you, they might go with you, or might suggest some other ideas. You might meet people through them. So again, it's about keeping that open mind, isn't it? So we can continuously move forward. So Sarah, you were talking a little bit there about self-care. You know, what else is important? Because sometimes people think self-care is quite selfish, especially if you know, I know you're a single mum with 2 kids. You know, as mums, we don't usually put ourselves first, do we? So self-care, I hear a lot from my clients, like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. I've never done that. I haven't done it for such a long time. So what's your advice around that, and how can people take care of themselves?
I totally hear you. I totally understand you. And I was exactly the same. And it's taken me years to overcome that. And I used to think it was totally self-indulgent to look after myself. But I've absolutely flipped that on the head. And I say that self-care is self-preservation. It's not at all indulgent, because if you're not self-caring and self-preserving, you are not there for your kids and for your wider family, and also for your friends. And they want to get the very best out of you. So the mindset behind that is, this is self-preservation, which is incredibly important as human beings, that we are looking after ourselves. And I think a way of doing that is to become as self-aware as is possible. So, you know, going back to Lucy and Rebecca talking about the loss cycle and the cycles you go through, I look at it even more closely, and I look at my daily cycle as to how I feel throughout the day, so that I know that I perform a lot better in the morning than I do later on in the afternoon. So my headspace is clearer, I feel stronger, I feel engaged with people, I feel genuinely happier and upbeat. And it's with experience that I've decided that I take on the big decisions then if I have to. I'm probably more social, and I push myself to be more social, and I'll take myself out of my comfort zone during those times in the day where I'm feeling stronger. And as I get to the end of the day, sort of typically 5 o'clock with the children, and my resolve is going, that is not the time to start having those big conversations or taking on those bigger things, until you get to a point where you know that you can go through that and out the other side, and possibly at 6 or 9 o'clock, you know, you're much more self-aware and you can start doing those things. So it's just about, I think of self-preservation and self-awareness is a way of being the very best version you can be. And that's so important for yourself and for your children as a role model. And that's not at all selfish.
I love that. Self-preservation, I think, is key. You know, I think a lot of us go into survival mode, don't we? And everything else sort of gets thrown to the wayside. But I think it's, as you said, Sarah, it's really important to take that time for you and actually, you know, understand that we control the remote control to our brain. So however we're feeling in the moment, we can change that. It was interesting because my son's got his common entrance exams coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're doing quite a lot of revision after he gets back from school. But bearing in mind, he starts at 8. I pick him up at 5:30. He's pretty shattered, he's only 13. He's shattered by the time he comes home. And then it's like, right, we've got to do some revision. And a couple of times he's been sat there with me and he's like, ah. And I'm like, okay, I know that you're exhausted. He goes, I'm exhausted. You understand? I'm so tired. He wants to do it, but he's like, I'm struggling, Mum, I'm struggling. I'm like, okay, well, actually, the most important lesson is not learning about how to do a litmus test. It's not about learning about Queen Victoria. I want you to learn how to change your state, because there are going to be times where you feel like you cannot go on, you cannot cope. It's too much. There's too much going on. You've had such a tough day. Maybe you've had letters from the lawyers. You've been involved with your ex. Something's gone wrong. But you still have to get up and carry on. Like my son still has to do the revision. You can't like not to do it. So the best tool and the best life skills are in those moments when the resistance is high and you're like, I just can't. Well, you can. You always can. And no, you can. Now it's about building those muscles in the moment when it hurts the most, because that's when you really develop that muscle. So I've been saying to the last couple of nights, okay, well, what can you do to get your power back, to start feeling ready? You just need like half an hour, 45 minutes. So how do we get you into that state so you can do it? So then he's coming up with ideas. So what can you do in those moments where you just want to get back into bed, pull the duvet over your head and just eat crisps or chocolate or whatever your thing is, right? Or just watch, you know, whatever soap you're watching at the time, you know, and not face the world. What can you do in those moments to give you your power back so you could do it? So for my son, it's like running around the garden or playing with the dog, or, you know, 5-star jumps is quite an instant hit. So little things like that. And also changing body language from this to, right, okay, I'm ready, let's go. You know, so just how do you take control of the remote control to your brain in those moments? Because that's really going to help you the most in life, to turn your pain to your power, to turn this adversity. You know, Lucy will know this, my motto for getting through my divorce was always like, I went through a lot of acrimony. I had some very difficult lawyers I was dealing with on both sides, my own and the other side. So it was just a really intense process. And my mantra to myself was that, you know, on the outside, people can say and do whatever they want to do, but they can't take inside. We control what's inside us. So my motto was, screw you, watch this. To the point where now, you know, we're all helping other people and we're training people around the world to do this. But you've got to have something that can flip you out of those negative states, so you can do a bit of that self-care. You can step up, because a lot of us will just want to crawl into a hole, and that's normal. It's totally normal, but it's about taking your power back. And also, Lucy, it's very much not just about the present, is it? It's also looking at the future and who do you want to become? And I think that's quite an interesting journey as you go on that personal development about, you know, what didn't work in the relationships before, so you can learn and bank those, but also looking at, well, who do I want to become over the next few years and you know, ahead?
Exactly. And I think this is the exciting part, because once you've got to this stage, you know really what you don't want. And that then will lead to what you do want or what you would like. And I think it's always good to start dreaming about it and make yourself a breakup bucket list and start to write down all the things that probably you couldn't do, or didn't have the time to do, or it wasn't the suitable moment. And then you can just dream away and think of the things you'd like to do and places you'd like to visit. As you say, you know, there's so much out there now and things you can do, which is absolutely brilliant.
What was on your breakup bucket list, Lucy?
Well, for me, I want to go traveling, but unfortunately it happened during the pandemic. So it's put a bit of a curtailed that a little bit. But then I've discovered other things. I've done silversmith, so I've learned a new hobby. And that's something that often when I speak to clients, I just said, probably there's something you would like to try. And so that's what I do.
Yeah, and also when I was, one of the things that helped me when my ex was in a relationship when I found out that our marriage was over. And she was a really good cook. And that was one of the things he kept saying to me. It was, oh, we're having these amazing dinner. I mean, he isn't the most subtle kind of people. So I was fully aware of where my weaknesses were as potentially a wife or a partner. It doesn't really matter, does it? I wasn't great at cooking. It wasn't my passion. Just had other things I was doing that I was better at. That wasn't one of them. So it was a bit of a bugbear. And I think sometimes when you've got something like that and you're facing maybe betrayal or a heartbreak and you're thinking, well, you know, who's ever going to love me again? And yeah, I'm really bad at cooking. So I actually then thought, right, I want to improve that, because either you can look at your weaknesses and say, I'll get someone else to do that for me. That wasn't quite possible. So I was like, okay, well, how do I improve? So I found somebody who was a really good cook, and I asked them if they could teach me a couple of staple things that if I was going to have a dinner party or I was going to have someone over for lunch, that I could put together quite confidently and get good at. And so by facing those things, I was like, okay, well, I'm not the best chef still. There was no miracle going to happen on that front. But I now boosted my confidence in those areas. So every time like he was talking about what a great catch and how she was, a new improved version of me, I would be like, well, actually, you don't know this, because I would never share that. But like for me, I've gone and I'm actually quite good at this and I'm quite good at that and I can do that. So again, it's about looking at what worries you and facing it, isn't it, Lucy? And not avoiding it in a lot of cases.
Yes, absolutely. It's just facing those fears, because the thing is, it may be that you were afraid of someone, leaving in a way, but in another way, you would actually have the pain of knowing that they stayed because you were just trying to convince them for that. So it's also facing the fact that, as you say, that you're responsible for yourself and going forwards, and shifting that your focus on what's ahead of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that. I think it's good advice. Rebecca, when you're meeting people, quite often people say, they used to say it to me. I don't know if they said it to any of you guys. Oh, is that your husband over there? If you're at a gathering or something, or, where's your partner? And you sort of have to go, And a lot of people, then if you say, well, I'm divorced, that sends them off into this big spin, doesn't it? Oh, God, how awkward. Is this person going to cry on me? So, finding the right things to say can be difficult. Have you got any advice for when you're back out there and you're meeting lots of different people, how to handle those kind of situations?
Yes, that does happen, doesn't it? Quite a lot. Yes, that's an interesting question. And I think you just have to, as Lucy said early on in this, it actually resonated, that you're only responsible for yourself. And I think if you can work on yourself and be able to think about what you want, then that gives you power to do all sorts of things. So those difficult situations become much easier to manage, really, because that could be an awful situation, really awkward. As you say, you're getting the embarrassment of the other person who say, oh, now what? And how do you handle it? And we're talking about flipping things and putting a positive spin on it. And I think if we go right back to basics, as Lucy said at the beginning, which is that you're responsible for yourself, and you can start making small decisions for yourself, you get used to that way of flipping it, really, and seeing the positive in things, so that when you do get back out there and you get faced by a question like that, or you're in that awkward situation, you've thought about ways to handle it, because you're relying on yourself. You're not relying on other people or worrying about what their reaction to it is going to be. It's just about where you are and what you've got to say about that situation, because you've thought about it for yourself. You haven't asked everybody else's opinion. You start by making small decisions for yourself, and with that comes the power and the clarity to be able to get out there and answer those questions, because they're going to come, because they always do.
I always do. I always try to disarm the people, because I think it's difficult, isn't it, when you sort of say, oh no, I'm divorced, and that's the sort of rabbit in headlights look you get from them. They're like, oh God, this could go one of two ways. So I go, oh, I'm happily divorced, thanks. And that kind of says, well, it explains the situation, but it also says, I'm fine. I'm not going to cry. I'm absolutely fine about it. And then usually sort of using the situation to move on to something else, because otherwise, where do you go from that? So usually they laugh, they go, oh, that's good then. Go, oh yeah, it's really good. And anyway, and then having a question to redirect, so you don't end up you remember that scene in Bridget Jones where they're all around the table and then she comes in and she's on her own and they're like, oh, Bridge, you know, you're on your own. Well, TikTok, love, what's going on? And she's just burning up, not knowing what to say. And she does come up with a few good, funny things in the moment, but it's quite difficult. And the pressure kind of can put you off going out when really this is a time where you want to be saying yes more to things, don't you, Sarah? Because I think the tendency is to shut yourself away after a breakup and, you know, and not do things and not venture outside of your comfort zone. But it can be good to say yes and to make that a conscious decision, Sarah, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that comes back to sort of, again, I always find it easier to say yes in the morning when I'm up and it's all, you know, you're feeling really good, but to say yes to as many things as possible is really important. And also to rehearse, I always have my sort of like little strap lines up my sleeve so that you are always armed with the answers to these questions. And they're just very simple answers that are natural, that would roll off the tongue for you. You know, they're not too staged, but as you say, I'm happily divorced. I'll say, yes, I'm divorced, I'm through the other side and all's good, you know, and it makes people feel at ease and you can move forward. But to also take your time, you know, it is a roller coaster. And at the beginning, post-divorce, you might not feel quite as confident, and it's just work in progress, tiny steps, and you will get there. And you will feel empowered, and there will be moments where you are smiling and laughing, and go home and celebrate those moments, because that's absolutely brilliant. Well done. You know, it's fantastic. So go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think, you know, actually embracing and focusing on the good stuff. Lucy talked a bit earlier about what you focus on. And I think you can focus on everything that's not quite right, but that's life. And if you focus on the things that are good and that are, you know, the opportunities, and start saying yes. In fact, I think there's a film, isn't there, with Jim Carrey, where he has to say yes to everything. It's just a funny way of doing things. But also, you know, saying no, I think, can be quite important as well. Saying no to the things that you don't want to do, Lucy. I mean, I think a lot of people sort of have lived their life serving other people, whether that's a husband or a wife or the kids or the in-laws and at work. You know, sometimes it can be quite healthy and liberating to say no, can't it?
Yes, exactly. Yes to no. I mean, I think if you're a person that finds it difficult to say no, then there's different ways of saying it, and I think it's learning how to approach that. And you can sort of say, well, let me think about that, or let me come back to you on that. And, you know, there's lots of different ways. So I think it's just learning how to say no in a different way. And it's empowering, because it gives you some, you know, gives you space and gives you time.
It definitely does. I like saying no sometimes. You say no in a friendly way, but also being firm, and especially, you know, talking about boundaries with your ex. Sometimes, you know, I mean, I had a client the other day who was saying, well, yeah, I mean, I want to stay amicable. So, you know, he's just, when he comes, he's still got the key. They're divorced, like they're done with a divorce. But because she's in the marital home and he used to live there, she doesn't want to upset him. And for the children, which is something that I hear a lot, for the children, you know, I've just let things carry on. So, you know, sometimes she's, I'll come downstairs and he's in the kitchen and he's making himself a cup of tea, and I didn't even know he'd arrived because he doesn't ring the bell. Did you see that, Rebecca, when you were working with clients, that sometimes their boundaries aren't quite, you know, maybe where it's healthy now, that even though they've got the decree absolute?
Absolutely. I mean, that really resonated. That's why when you said that, I couldn't help but nod, because it just reminded me absolutely of a case like that, where the parties had been separated for a couple of years, and yet he would suddenly appear in the kitchen or even in the bedroom and all over the place, and uninvited, obviously, and and it just if he came to look after the children, he just seemed to think it was acceptable to stay overnight there, and it was, the boundaries had really been eroded by this situation. And I think as a coach we can look at that and try to see, well, boundaries don't just break down overnight. They've happened over a period of time, over a period of years, and things that maybe would have been definite no's at the beginning, oh well, maybe it's not that bad, and then on it goes, and it's slowly, isn't it, until such point you've got this person actually sleeping in the guest room 5 years after your divorce, and it's just not acceptable. So yes, I think boundaries are a real key issue that we can look at, and and understand where those boundaries have started to fall down and erode, and do some work on how that's not going to happen in the future by thinking about what you want your future to look like and the boundaries you're going to put in place so that you don't make the same mistake again, but you learn from that. But you don't realize it's happening when it's happening. It's so slow and insidious. And now I was talking to that lady actually the other week. We met for coffee, and he's nowhere near now. I mean, he sees the children as and when it's all organised, and no more sleeping in guest room beds anymore or appearing in the kitchen. So
yeah, I just think some people are too nice though, Sarah. Do you find that as well? Like some people just don't want to put in some rules to change things, and they're very much worried about, well, the children might wonder why daddy can't come in and he's on the doorstep when he used to come in. I know you're a single mum with 2 kids. So how do you navigate those challenges?
I find I've had to work really hard personally to have the confidence and the courage to put my boundaries in. And I think, you know, be kind to yourself again, that it is very much work in progress to understand the importance of putting boundaries in. And again, it's all about your self-preservation. It's not about you being unkind or selfish. It's about you creating your sanctuary, your safe place for yourself and your children. And if you can take yourself out of your head and think of the reasons why you're actually putting those boundaries in place, it will empower you to actually deliver rather than sort of agonizing in your head, am I being unkind? Am I being unreasonable? Because actually you're not being unkind, you're not being unreasonable. What you're being is very safe and secure and preserving yourself and your children. And mentally, how I think of it is that I'm the sort of soldier that is standing in front of my children, and they stand behind me and I protect them. And if I'm not there, they don't have that person to protect them and they can't speak up. So as painful or as uncomfortable as it is sometimes to have the voice to put in your boundaries, you learn to do it. And again, as Sarah would say, you do it once and the adrenaline rushes and you go away and you think, my goodness, I've done it, I can do it. And in the next scenario, you'll do it with ease. And then your elastic band, your comfort zone is being stretched every time, but you are doing it, you're getting there and you're getting out the other side. And again, celebrate that moment massively because it's a huge, huge achievement. And keep pushing forward, but knowing that boundaries is not selfish, it's self-preservation.
I love that. And I think the celebration bit you brought up is really important. Patting yourself on the back and being proud of yourself. I think you just have to, I guess, flag up with, you know, if you're coming out of a toxic or abusive relationship, we've got to be careful with what boundaries we put in and if that's going to trigger something that maybe makes you or your kids not safe. So again, this is, you know, you've got to obviously tailor this to individuals, which obviously is what we do as coaches. But, you know, good advice there. At least think through what is acceptable behavior for you. And as Sarah said, you know, putting those in place. Just, you know, again, it's like the being in the plane, isn't it? They always say put your oxygen mask on first and then your kid. But our instinct is, no, hang on, I'll make sure they're okay and then I'll look after me. But yeah, the truth is, unless we are happy or unless we are comfortable with the way things are going, we can't best parent, we can't best look after anyone, whether it's friends or family or other people in our lives. So it is about that self-care, which does underline everything that happens moving forward when you're getting your life back on track again after a breakup. So that's why it's so important and essential. So, okay, guys, well, I mean, thanks so much for your advice. We'll just quickly go around. And if people listening here are sort of facing their divorce, what's the one piece of advice that you think is the most useful? Either it helped you or you think helps the most clients, that if you could sort of summarize, you know, to give people hope that they can get through this, what would that one piece of advice be? Lucy, let's start with you.
Yes, well, most of the clients I've seen, they're in that emotional overwhelm at the beginning, and just to say it's quite normal. You will go through all of that, as we said, the breakup process, and you know, you will go backwards and forwards with that, so that's quite normal and you will get through it. It's a moment in time, it doesn't last forever.
Yeah, I love that. It is normal. I think that's one of the things that we think we're very alone and no one else is going through it, but actually there's lots of people, aren't there, and you will get through it. Thank you, Lucy. Rebecca.
I think surround yourself with good people. Make sure that you have the right people around you. Get the right solicitor for you. There's lots of them out there. Find out what sort of solicitor you want, because personality, empathy, all of those things are just as important as knowing the law, which is what all solicitors should know anyway. It's got to be a good fit for you. Have a good friend, not the friend who's going to be negative, but somebody who's going to really support you and be there for you. A good financial advisor as well, to give you the advice you need. All of those people will enable you to empower yourself through this process. So just get good people. That's my advice.
Yeah, really good advice. The quality of the people you surround yourself with will have a direct impact on the quality of your life and how you're feeling. So that is really good advice. Thank you, Rebecca. And Sarah?
Following on from that, I would also encourage have your exercise buddy, your exercise buddy that you are accountable to. So on those days when you are feeling you cannot get yourself out of bed, get out of bed, open the curtains, see the fresh air, see daylight, and get outside in daylight and actually move your body and walk and talk, and you will feel so much better, and know that you will get through this. This will pass. And I sort of used to see it as a weather front. You know, the weather keeps changing, everything keeps changing. You will get through it. So keep pushing forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a massive believer in like getting outside in nature. It does scientifically proven actually that being in beautiful surroundings, whether that's woods, trees, with a lake, water, you know, by the coast, if you can, even just your local park, will actually scientifically, it's proven it will boost your mood if you're out in nature. So great advice. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for all your incredible advice. I hope it's helped a lot of people. I know it will have. And yeah, thank you for contributing. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Keep going. As everyone said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can speed that up with some of the tools and techniques that my coaches can share. So do get in touch. If you're interested, visit sarahdavidson.com for more information. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Lots of love. Take care.